Thank you, Sarens, for what you do, for all of your prayers and support over the years. It's important work, the work of vocations. As we know, God is the one who does the calling. It's God grace who moves the young man's heart, but we get to cooperate in that. Right? And so he asks us to ask him for more vocations. And so it's something we never stop doing. I wanted to just share a little bit about my own life today, and hopefully to be able to point out a couple things maybe that might be insightful for you, especially when it comes to the priesthood or a call to a religious vocation. So I probably don't have to spend a lot of time on who I am. Most of you probably know at least my grandparents. So I have my grandpa and grandma Vetter, or August and Loretta Vetter. My dad is Leland. If you've met him, you've met him. My mom's side, Victor and Mary Richter were my grandparents. Mary's still doing well. She lives with my parents in Linton. My mom is Mary Ann. So I came from a family full of vocations. Fun fact for you, Bishop Vetter and Monsignor Richter were the altar boys at my parents' wedding. That's where they met for the first time. And it's a very beautiful testament, actually, of how something like a holy marriage can actually be the start of something wonderful, even in the priesthood. Right? That those two families coming together and being a faithful witness in their marriage was already a spark for those young men who got to meet that day in the sanctuary. So I was born in Torrington, Wyoming. It's 8 hours south of here, right in the corner of Colorado, Nebraska, and Wyoming. Small town of about 5,000, farming, ranching, a little 2-year college there where my dad taught welding. That's how they got there. So we all grew up there. I went to public school all the way through high school. The nearest Catholic high school, you would have had to go to Denver. Right? There is not a Catholic high school in the state of Wyoming. The nearest Catholic grade school would have been over 85 miles away. And so we grew up in a place that I explain is where the Catholic faith was very poor. Not just materially, but poor spiritually, right? They have half the Catholics that we have and 3 times the size of a diocese with less than half the priests. And so there's a lot of isolation, a lot of people that are alone, right? A lot of poverty. And so there's a lot of challenges with the faith. And so I grew up in a time where our parish had a lot of faithful older people. Other than that, it was dead. There were very few kids, very few young families. But I remember growing up being kind of the one family that was there all the time, right? Every Sunday, the non-negotiables, right? Prayer, holy days of obligation. And my parents witnessed that to me really well. Every summer, we would come back from Wyoming and we'd spend 3 months down by Vetterville, out by Linton. We had a cabin. And then each of us kids, there was 10 of us, we would get farmed out to a different family member, literally farmed out. So as we were driving through Bismarck to go to Linton, I would get dropped off at the Richters. And from the time I was 8 till I was 18, I spent every summer there. And likewise with every other brother or sister. So we got to know our larger families. We got to live with them, get to know them a lot better. And so I always say that it was very clear to me and to my family, I think, that the real spiritual home was Bismarck. was the Diocese of Bismarck. Even though I had a great experience growing up in my hometown. It's always going to be my hometown, but there was something spiritually more formative here that I remember even as a kid. After high school, I guess I could mention, it's always good to know these fun facts, I was homecoming king, which I'm proud of. Really fun fact for you, when I was over in Rome, in my first year in Rome, studying to be a priest, there was 6 of us there at the time. Father Christian Smith, Father Nicholas Vetter, my brother, Father Grant Dvorak, Father Jake Magnuson, and Father Josh Hill, my classmate. All 6 of us were homecoming kings. So keep your eyes peeled for homecoming kings. So after high school, I went to the University of Wyoming and actually got a degree in education, secondary education history. And so it's kind of funny how God works, right? That's exactly what I'm teaching now at St. Mary's. 7th period today at 1:30. So it's been a great gift, right? That's one of those small perks where God gives you back what you've given him, but a 100-fold in ways that you never could have guessed. Went to University of Wyoming. University of Wyoming was a good school, home of the Cowboys. But again, very, very, very little witness to the faith there. You had to really look for the Catholic faith to find it on that campus. Now, they're all Christians, they would say, and they were, but they're not church-going Christians at all. And so it was difficult to find those sorts of communities and that support. I left there in 2012, not in the best place spiritually, struggling with the faith. Not that I ever doubted it or gave it up, but the world's tough. And if you think you're going to do it alone without a community, it's just foolishness. The world's going to win every time. And so I actually got a job in Belfield, North Dakota, with a young man named Ben Richard. They're a Catholic family from out there, the farm and ranch. He took welding from my dad 25 years earlier. He rode saddle bronc, and he took welding. And he opened up a new shop, and what do you know, right? The oil boom blew up. And so he was looking for laborers. So I said, well, I'll just go up there and work. Why not? Make a bunch of money. Can't hurt, and figure out what I want to do. Because I knew I wanted to teach. So I moved to Belfield in 2012, and everything was great. Everything, as far as the world would say, was amazing. I was making 6 figures almost instantly. I was one of the most educated guys there with a 4-year degree. I realized I had all sorts of gifts as far as what education had given me, technical skills, computer skills that nobody else really had. My boss was very insightful to see that. And so he sent me to further education. I started to do drafting work, so doing blueprints for all the welders in all of our fabrication. And from the year I started with him, he had a $1 million business. And the last year that I was there, or I guess the year after I was there, he called me and said it was a $22 million business. And there was 0 increase of employees. It was just kind of a wild time, right, as you know. But it was very formative for me to be part of, and it was very freeing. Like, I just got to use my gifts however I wanted, and people would reward you for it, and so I could move forward. And as good as all that was, he was a great boss. His family was very Catholic. They welcomed me in very much so because they had known my dad, and they respected him a lot. I was welcomed by the community. I had some good friends and families that took me in. Work was good. I liked the employees I worked with. But at the end of the day, I was completely empty. And that only took me about 1 year to get there. To get to a place where I realized this isn't enough. This isn't enough. There's got to be something more. And I remember one day waking up, living in my camper. So I lived in a camper for a year because there was no place else to live. And I remember looking in the mirror one day and just having a very clear word spoken to me. And the word was, "You're not happy." And I remember looking back at myself in the mirror, saying yeah, I don't want this. Don't want it. So that was kind of my rebirth into my faith, a more serious re-entering into my faith. I went to, so St. Bernard in Belfield. It's a beautiful little parish. They still had daily adoration at that time, which was very providential. So I could just stop in. Come to find out, my boss's mom was in charge of that. So another, you're right, how God put you in the right place. And I remember after a couple months of being more serious with my faith, that something was put on my heart of going to adoration. I had no idea what it was. My parents had taken me when I was young, but it was just a clench your fist, white knuckle, stare at the white wall, or Jesus, come to find out, right? But but I never had any understanding of what it was or what I was supposed to be doing there. But for whatever reason, it got put on my heart that I needed to sign up for an hour of adoration at this little parish. And I remember telling my boss, I was like, hey, I had it all figured out, right? The perfect day, the perfect hour, so it wouldn't take away from work and it wouldn't cause disruption. And I told him, I was like, hey, so I think I got to do an hour of adoration every week. And so all I want is I would ask that you don't have to pay me over lunch on Thursday, but I'd like to go in Thursday over lunch, if that's all right. You might just have to give me 5 or 10 minutes, right, on either side so I can be on time. Because he was always very generous and he paid us through lunch. And I remember he looked at me really confused. You could tell he had no idea what was going on, but he knew enough that his mom ran it. And so after a real long pause, he just said, I'll still pay you. Go in, I'll pay you, but you just got to pray for the guys once in a while. And so that's what I did. I got paid $40 an hour to sit in there. What a gift. On Thursdays, that's probably a time and a half. And so that was a great gift, right? God was making it very easy for me. Very easy for me. And going to adoration is where my relationship with Jesus began. Right? With a real person, not just an institutional church, not just a book with words on it, not just a good family or a community that tells you you're supposed to do it, but he became a real person that I could speak to, and I could tell him my loneliness, my lack of fulfillment, and the good things too, right? All the wonderful things that were going on in my life. So then, right, so from that point forward, it's like I'm basically in. I just don't know which direction I'm in. And so for the next 2 years, I dated a number of really good young women from the area. And so how I explained it is I basically did the, by process of elimination, sort of vocational discernment. I tried every other option, but the one that I maybe knew about but didn't want to acknowledge, that was on my heart. And it was funny enough, after my last girlfriend who I broke up with in May of 2016, I spoke with my pastor and I said, it didn't work out again. it was ended well, like there's no like hard feelings, but like it's not going to work. And I remember he looked at me and he said, "How many more times do you have to do this?" And it struck me right to the heart. He didn't have to say anything else. It struck me to the heart. And so I actually started to talk with Father Waltz in June of that year. And I joined seminary in August. It's kind of the way I had to do it, I think. My parents didn't know until well into July. I told nobody about the process because I didn't know if I'd be accepted and all that. And so it went really fast once it happened. The point I want to highlight for all of you, though, was in that 2-year window when I was trying to do the process of elimination, probably the most formative things that happened to me through more elderly people at the parish, within my own family, and then people that were just out of their own child year. Like all their children had left the house, and they very much kind of adopted me as a son, as somebody that we could help each other somehow. And so, right, like I want to encourage all of you here, and I think in a large way, right, that's what the Serrans are so good at. That there's a lady there still alive, Regina Schmidt. Like every Sunday, and she's the most, sweetest lady, most sincere. She would come up to me after Mass, very appropriately, not in public, not to embarrass me or anything, but she would always tell me that I'd be a good priest. I never wanted to receive it, ever, but I did. And it was important that she did that, but that there was just kind of a stranger from the parish doing that. Right? I have a really good kind of adopted family, Roger and Rose Decker. They're very active in Belfield. All their children were gone. I grew really close with them, and Roger and Rose were like another set of parents to me. And they were very good at encouraging whatever I needed to do, right? And being supportive of me in that. And the same with my pastor, right? People at the parish. The Christmas before I joined Victor Richter, my grandpa, who maybe some of you know was in seminary 7 years himself and knew the whole time he wasn't called to be a priest, but he was scared of his mom. That's a true story. That's a true story. He had a lot of pressure. So he knew better than anyone, right, of how damaging pressure could be if it was done in the wrong way. Pulled me aside at Christmas and said, I don't know if you're called to be a priest or not, but if you have a desire on your heart, then going to the seminary is a wonderful thing. And I had a great experience there. And that was very formative for me too, right? For him to give permission, knowing that he had, and that he left, and he had still a really full life, and God blessed him in all sorts of ways. It just kind of gave me the freedom. And so joining then in 2016, right, this may be insightful for you as well. I think it's always good to kind of point out when people join seminary, when they join religious life, the best place they could ever be, like they don't even know what that means, right? They can't. How could they? They've never lived it. And so the best place that they could be is in a place of Jesus is the only one who's going to fulfill me. And I'm going to follow that wherever it goes. Right? All of you in here who are married know that very well, that truth. Only Jesus is going to fulfill us. Right? And now if you follow that and you trust him, he's going to lead you to that fulfillment and that happiness, that peace of heart. And so to just be encouraging of people when they join, young people, that if they're desiring Jesus first and foremost, then there's nothing to be afraid of in formation. And so that's very much where I was. It was like, I've tried everything else. So, okay, Jesus, I guess this is like kind of my last option. I'm going to go in. And I went in, and some people have these profound sort of moments. Maybe Jesus appears to them or speaks a word to them or calls them as his priest. I never had that. But when I went to seminary, within the first month, I experienced the most peace, joy, happiness, fulfillment that I had ever experienced. And so it was easy for me to keep saying yes each year. Right? Trusting that that's how Jesus works, right? He doesn't work in fear or worry, anxiety, or any of those things, but he works in peace and joy and fulfillment. And so I was free to just keep following that. You'll recognize that when you meet young seminarians, when you meet young religious. You'll recognize if they're at a place of peace or not, if they're at a place of joy and happiness and fulfillment or not. And so our job is to encourage them, right? Is to encourage them both ways, right? If they're not experiencing that peace, joy, happiness, right? That it's all right, right? Jesus does in fact want that for them, and he has a plan for them. But that formation gives you all the tools to make those decisions prudently and wisely, so that people can have a real answer to that. And then they can be free, right? They can be free either way, to be a priest, to be a religious, or not. But either way, to be holy. Because that's what it's all about, right? Is us becoming saints. And that's why it's so important that we understand that Jesus is our fulfillment. Right? He created us for himself. He created us for heaven. That's what all of this is about. And so next time you see a young man, a young woman that you think would be good, and I don't know if you understand what that means. You know this way better than I can probably articulate. When you see a person who's like a normal young man or woman, somebody who you would want to marry your son or daughter, somebody who treats people well, somebody who you would want at your deathbed, ask them, right? Not the oddball that you don't want to be around, right? Ask the person that has an effect on you when you see them at Mass, when you see them involved in things at the parish, those people who inspire you, and tell them that. And if Jesus is asking them to give you those gifts, to give his church those gifts, he'll do the rest. He'll do the rest to get them in. And so be encouraged in that. Be encouraged in prayer, as I said. Prayer is so important. And in seminary, it was quite amazing. The good people in Belfield would pray for me weekly at one of their holy hours. And so whoever was scheduled for that would then write me a letter saying that they offered that holy hour. And, you have to believe it in faith. These things don't make sense if you don't have faith. But when I would be in seminary, and you're living a very recollected life, right? You're journaling, you're praying a lot, you're very aware spiritually of what's going on. Every time I'd get one of those letters, if I dared to look back at the timeline, it was almost inevitable that some grace was given. In the moment of struggle, of, loneliness, weakness, whatever it was, you could look back, trying to figure out how many days the mail takes to get there. But you could count it back and say, wow, these prayers actually did do something, right? It was real. God responded to that person's prayer of faith. And for whatever reason, he allows them to participate in me receiving that. And so, again, I just want to encourage you that that's a wonderful gift that you can give. I'll leave you with this, just one more little story. There's so many already, right? And there's people in this room that have already been able to be part of their lives in a way I never could have imagined, right? As a seminarian, as a drafter in Belfield, living in a camper. But that's what God can do. There's a young girl that wrote me in 5th grade when I was my first year in seminary. Goes to Bishop Ryan, and she's just writing for their religion class, seeing how I was doing. And so I responded back to her. And that relationship continued all the way through my seminary, all 7 years. And the summer before my last, I went up and met with her in Mandan, met her family. It's a beautiful family. Her dad is dying from a terrible, debilitating illness. And she played her violin for me. It was like a real profound experience of a taste of what fatherhood looks like, spiritual fatherhood looks like. And so she actually was the young lady that played the violin for our ordination, for my first Mass. And now, right, I got to go to Steubenville with her because she's a junior, and so I was on the same bus with her. She's going to be going to Rome this year to see where I got to study. It's just a wonderful example of how someone's prayers, not only the teachers, not only the schools, but even this little girl, right, who is adopted, is now part of something so profound. I'm only just beginning to understand in the smallest way what God is doing in that, right? It's just beginning what he wants with her life and how I get to be a part of it somehow. And so, yeah, priesthood, the religious life, it is the fullest life that I could ever imagine. That's in a very positive way. It's full in a busy way too, right? But it's full in a way that I am never lacking, and God is providing. And so be encouraged that if you see that young person again, to invite them. Tell them what you see in them that would make them a good priest, and encourage them to pursue it if that's what Jesus wants for them. And so thank you again for all of your prayers. Continue all your good work. I'm going to leave because I got to go teach these seniors a couple more weeks. And yeah, maybe since it's Friday, we usually have question day Friday, maybe I might give them a little vocation talk. I haven't done it yet, but thank you for your time and all your prayers and work. God bless.